CPU jumps up to 60% as soon as I turn this shit on. Oh Lord, oh God. Hopefully it works. So this is my first time using Twitch Studio, so we'll see how it fares. I think it'll just, okay, there's two people here. Hello everyone. I'm using my own internet connection and I'm using Twitch Studio today, so it's a bit of a change not having Maddie at the helm, but we'll just have a little chill chat today. I know everybody's got the crud that's going around. I just had it. I got the con crud from Furfest. But I am just now. Oh, boo to me. Boo. We hate the man whose channel this is. Fuck him. We hate his ass. Get his ass. Oh, I'm glad the chat's actually showing up. Hi, Board Mom. Hi, Eric. Yeah, I got the Furfest con crud. I was, but you know, because I'm on that Sigma grind set and because I'm in the middle of editing my third book, I have not been taking it easy this week, despite being sick. Thankfully, it does not seem to be COVID. It seems to be that same illness that's going around with so many other people. And then Maddie, last night, let me know that she thinks she has the flu. She doesn't have COVID on any rapid tests or anything like that, so that's good. But does seem to be feeling a little under the weather, sadly. So tissue emoji in the chat for our good homie Madeline. How's everybody else feeling today? Is anybody else sick? Is everybody's coworkers sick and short-staffed? Oh, thank you. Sneeze emoji. Anybody else got the con crud? I'm sick of it. Sick with it. I'm down with the sickness. Oh my god, this setup is actually, thank god, Twitch Studio is like actually not intuitive per se, but it is working. It was pretty simple to figure out, so that's good. So I was thinking today, since we're not going to be playing... Oh, I literally just finished the Furfest stream. Very yes to the idea of ADHD versus autism stream in the future. Oh, yes, Chubby Kumquat. That is on the horizon. We wanted to do it this week, but we decided the tech side of it, we just weren't going to have enough time to test it because this is the kind of end of the semester week of meetings and department Christmas parties and all of that kind of shit for me. But we are pretty soon going to do the autism versus ADHD stream where Maddie and I compete in some game together. So we're competing against each other, autism versus ADHD, while talking about the similarities versus differences between autistics and ADHDs. 2 enter, 1 wins. And it really depends on the game. We also had this really funny experience this fall at Maddie's house with Maddie and Megan, Maddie's spouse, and some other friends. We were playing this game called Hues and Cues. And Hues and Cues is this board game with all the Pantone colors on a board. And basically, one person pulls a Pantone color from a deck of cards, and then they have to use a few words to describe that color without revealing what it is, and everyone else has to kind of guess what the specific hue is. Oh wow, Oh, thank you for the follow. Oh my god, I just got a sound effect. Wow. Twitch Studio has this stuff like just built in automatically, which is great. But basically, what we found out was we were playing Hues and Cues with our friend Minmo, who is a visual artist, and a few other people one person who works in kind of design. And the people who were the best at guessing colors correctly were people who worked in the visual arts, or and then so Minmo and then the friend who was a designer were at the top. I was kind of near the middle because of some color knowledge, mostly through just being interested in fashion, and then Maddie, who wears nothing but black, was consistently the worst at guessing colors, because she doesn't have to discern the difference between them because she wears black all the time. um though I bet if we had a version of Hues and Cues where people were trying to guess different shades of black, gray and like dark gray and charcoal and gunmetal and all of these other shades of black and gray, leather, matte versus shiny, I'm sure Maddie would win because she has so much in her arsenal in that way. But then we switched to playing Hues and Cues in this way where you just named an emotion and then went to see what colors people associated that emotion with. And that was actually really cool. Like almost everybody thought wistful, which was the one that I did, was light blue, which is exactly what I envisioned it as being. I envisioned wistful as being a light blue color. Jealousy, people either went with red or different shades of red or green. Panic was like a certain kind of electric yellow. It's a really fun game. I don't like really long, complicated board games. They're very stressful to me most of the time. So that was a really nice one to play that had like a very low barrier to entry. Hues and Cues. Um, oh no.jpg. My coworkers routinely use the wrong shade of red for our internal branding, and it makes my autistic ass so mad they can't see it. Oh God. See, and this is something that will be, I think, really interesting for the autism versus ADHD stream, because Maddie and I are really interesting foils for each other in that I'm an autistic person who is very chaotic and very sloppy, as you can see from how sloppy this stream is and how everything that I post on Instagram always is. Like, I have typos, I have things formatted weird, I don't care if things are centered, I can't visually see if things are laid out in a way that makes sense. Um, I just care about getting the idea out, getting something done to completion. Um, I got that dog in me. Um, but I'm not an ADHDer. These are all qualities that are associated with ADHDers. Whereas Maddie, I mean, you've seen the streams. She puts them together so meticulously. She puts together all these visuals, even though she does it in the visual style that is my chaotic visual style. It's because she's chosen that as the aesthetic for the stream. And, I know so many ADHDers who have, a really organized work schedule, really put together like flow of processes for making their art, or doing whatever it is that they do. They have an organizational system and they live and die by it. Whereas my autistic ass is really, really rigid about the handful of things that I'm rigid about, like my writing schedule, like my workout schedule, about doing things the way that I want to do them. But I'm way more chaotic than most ADHDers, even though ADHD is supposedly the chaos disorder. So I think the autism versus ADHD conversation and the overlaps and distinctions will be really interesting to talk about. But I shouldn't get ahead of us on that one because I want to save that for when Maddie's here. I also want to take a minute to post the link to this stream on Tumblr, because I've realized on Tumblr you can embed the video right into the Tumblr feed so it plays live in Tumblr. And this is just another one of those things that just shows how Tumblr really is the GOAT. Like on Instagram, they don't allow you to embed links almost anywhere because they don't want you leaving the app, and they don't want you checking other sources of information or verifying anything. In practice, they don't want that because they discourage leaving the app in any way possible. And TikTok does this too, of course. But Tumblr, just natively allows you to embed links to articles, to videos, to Twitch streams, and it just is a so much nicer experience. Yes, you can put links into stories on Instagram, though old heads will remember it used to be that you didn't have the power to do that until you had over 10K followers, which is just absolutely absurd. Like removing functionality to the average user and only letting like a super creator, a power user, whatever you want to call it, get to link out is just absurd. Um, Neo Cities is really fun too, Bread Hummus. I really love how Neo Cities looks. Um, Hi, it's for our yeah. Maddie's Maddie's got the flu, but we're gonna try and reschedule for next week, hopefully. And thankfully, I do not have any work meetings tomorrow next week, so I will be fully charged up. Cats, cats, cats. Did you ever think you had ADHD because of your chaos? This is a great question, and this is something that we'll definitely get into in the autism versus ADHD stream, because it kind of comes down to questions of like what has explanatory power and what kind of um, gives you like the language for showing affiliation. And there's just so much that comes down to how ADHD is described and the struggles that people with ADHD say that they have, that I just can't say that I really resonate with like a lot of those struggles or impediments or impairments or whatever you want to call them. Like, I've never missed a deadline on a project ever in my life. I've only ever been late to something, an event, if I deliberately set out to be late to it as a strategy for minimizing my time there, or because I learned, oh, I'm supposed to show up to parties late. You're not supposed to show up to parties on time. Um, do I have some like impulsivity stuff? Yes, but I also kind of like really like it and see it as very advantageous in my life and kind of helping break me out of the rigidity and kind of fear of change that I think autism would otherwise introduce in my life. Um, so I actually just for the most part have just decided to identify as an Aries instead of identifying as an ADHDer. Basically, that like in terms of what better explains how I see myself and how I see my energy levels and fickleness and impulsivity and easily boredness, it just makes more sense to me to see it as, oh, I'm just a chaotic fire sign than to say that I have ADHD. Um, you know, that's just, and yeah, and just in terms of meeting ADHDers and being close with so many ADHDers, I just see this like really symbiotic relationship between them and me. Like ADHDers tend to love me. Like we get each other in different ways. We meet different needs for each other. It's very, very aligned but different. Is just how I perceive it. But I think the divide between the two things is kind of a distinction without a real difference. Um, okay, so there was a longer question I wanted to pull up. Let's see. Chubby Kumquat. A few months ago, I was using one of those AI chat. Oh, oops. Sorry, I'm just scrolling up in the chat a little bit. Curiously anxious. Oh, okay, I was using one of those AI generation things, and it was really interesting to put in emotions and things that don't have an obvious representation and see what it would come up with for like curiously anxious or something. The colors it chose were interesting. Yeah, yeah. I mean, those AI chatbots kind of represent our kind of not our collective consciousness in like the Jungian sense of the term, but more in like the worst dredges of the internet, as well as all published art and the biases that are already baked into existing systems, which is, of course, part of why those AI hiring processes are particularly evil because they just reproduce a lot of the racial biases that already exist in society and so on and so forth. So it's a funny peek into just what kind of symbols and trends and biases appear in society over and over again and appear in our media. Excuse me. So a lot of interesting stuff kind of comes out of that, as well as just I don't know, it just regurgitates like our most base impulses in some ways. Um, and the other thing that comes to mind there, of course, is those AI generated YouTube videos for babies that really represent a lot of kids' most basic curiosities. And so you get a lot of like pregnant Elsa and Spider-Man in the hospital videos because they just know if you give a toddler unalloyed access to YouTube, after a few clicks, they want to see pregnant Elsa and Spider-Man. Seeing a few other mentions in the chat about how neurodivergence and astrology kind of go together. And I would love, actually, since Maddie doesn't give a fuck about astrology, this would be a great time to have an astrology chat. Hi, Abby. Welcome from work. Cats said, my Sagittarius sun is my ADHD energy. My Virgo moon is the autism. Oh my God. See, and that's the thing. I'm a chaotic autistic. And so Virgos, I'm like, oh my God, you guys are too perfectionistic. I can't with it. I don't have a lot of earth sign in my chart other than, what is it? My Saturn is Capricorn, I think, right? We're in like, most of us millennials are in generation Capricorn, which, if you're into that kind of stuff, we can say is an explanation for why we end up having to be such a practical kind of generation and are so minded with preserving resources and overachievement and kind of covering our own asses and protecting our own asses. Oh, thanks for the follow, V-Bunnies. Welcome. We're just talking about neurodivergence and astrology right now, for the most part. Aquarius ADHDer, Aubrey. Cello, yes. Oh, do you play the cello? I'm a lapsed cello player, by the way. But I'm an Aquarius rising, which I love talking about rising signs because if you're interested in autism masking and unmasking, your rising sign is basically your mask in astrology. Your rising sign is the sign or the traits that you embody that you put out into the world to achieve your goals. And so as an Aquarius rising, and this is really, feels true. Doesn't have to be metaphysically true. I don't believe in it metaphysically, but it does certainly appear to be true that throughout my life I've put on a mask of nonconformity, weirdness, alienness. These are all kind of Aquarius traits. Rationality, skepticism. Aquariuses are generally not joiners. They're usually trying to kind of deviate from the horde to kind of accomplish their goals. And that's certainly how I've masked myself over the years. And if you've read Unmasking Autism, you know that I've really been all about cultivating a conscientious nonconformist alt kind of appearance for myself, both literal appearance and just in terms of the mannerisms and the viewpoints I kind of project out in the world to kind of accomplish my goals. So, oh, Eric, I just checked CoStar and it says there's tension between us. Oh, is that right now? Is that what's in the stars right now? Because because you're a Libra, and Libras and Aries, I mean, Libras always love me, just as ADHDers always love me. And I would say that Libras are kind of an ADHDer kind of sign in some ways, just because of the balance and the trying to consider a lot of different factors at once. It can be distracting, potentially, if you're not ascended. I used to attribute my impulsivity to being a Sagittarius, but it turns out it's just the ADHD. Oh, thank you for doing moderation things, Eric. My first successful ban. Woo. Okay, can we get hammers in the chat for Eric having successfully wielded the ban hammer? I didn't even see what you banned the person for, so you did great work. Like, cheers. It looked like a bot. I mean, If they weren't saying it, well, yeah, it's probably good. I was gonna say, oh, keep them, whatever, who cares? But no, if they're a bot, it's probably good to ban them because there are definitely people who build bots that seek out the queer tags on Twitch and then spam the chat with shit. So definitely good to wield the ban hammer. Thank you. And yeah, V bunnies. Thank you for first time chatter. I got a little notification here. First time chat. I wrote off my impulsivity as just being a Sagittarius until I figured out it's the AUDHD. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we can talk about astrology, astrological signs, personas, and diagnostic labels as all just being these man-made creations for summing up a variety of different human experiences and trying to sort them into buckets to either communicate who we are to other people or communicate how we see ourselves, to find affiliation with other people, or also to kind of communicate what we need. And as far as that goes, astrology is not the best option since we don't choose our astrological sign and we can choose some of those other things. Um, I have little to no water on my chart, and I'm a Libra sun and Gemini moon. Lots of fire and earth. I'm autistic as well. Yes, I am. I'm so glad and proud to be a autistic fire sign because I feel like autism is stereotyped as being this like homebody mental disorder or whatever, where you don't get out and crave new experiences and you don't socialize. And of course, Unmasking Autism, a lot of the book is about kind of questioning that approach to understanding autism, that's really just one narrow subpopulation of us. And we're not all computer programmers who never leave the house. Some of us are especially interested in riding trains. Eric. Cats says, I see them as archetypes. Same with tarot. Yes. And tarot, what's beautiful about tarot is just a projective test. It's like a Rorschach ink blot. It doesn't have to have any magic behind it. It wasn't even designed to involve magic at all. You can do a tarot reading without believing that the cards or the universe is telling you anything. It's about what you see in the cards. And using it as a tool for self-reflection. And I've had some really, really meaningful tarot readings from that. The Thoth Tarot is so gorgeous. What I use is a Metal Gear Solid tarot deck, major arcana only, because I'm a short-tempered, impatient Aries like that. So I just do basically the Cliff Notes tarot reading. Hey Stacy. Little Gengar emoji. We were just talking about tarot. Thoughts on the DS2 tease? Is that Death Stranding? Oh my god, I missed it. Oh shit. Oh no, all I saw was that there's a new Hades coming out and everybody's just jizzing and shitting and crying and pissing about that. This might hurt tarot. Abby, is that a tarot deck or is that like a book? Because I could honestly really use like a book of tarot spreads to do. Chubby Kumquat, any recommendations for learning about tarot? I've gotten readings and want to learn more. So Chubby Kumquat, here's what I'll say, just what, and I hope people share in the chat as well. But for me, the way I got into tarot was I bought this Metal Gear Solid tarot deck because I had seen the art online and I loved it. I think finding a deck that you really like and that connects to, archetypes or symbols that mean a lot to you is a great way to start because it'll be more personal. Though you can also always start with the Rider Waite classic, deck. That's the one that was like developed in the Middle Ages. The artwork has been used since tarot was developed, in like whatever, the 14th century or whatever it was. But Abby's recommending a deck that is very queer. There's lots of beautiful decks out there. There's an indigenous one. There's a bunch of indigenous ones, but there's one that I've seen kind of around at local magic shops that are really cool. But find a deck that you really like, where the art really resonates with you, or start with the traditional Rider Waite. and then start looking up tarot spreads. And what a tarot spread is, and you can just do this online, or you can use like tarot spread as like a tag on like Instagram or Tumblr. And what a tarot spread is basically a prompt, a series of questions that you're asking the deck that you're going to reflect on, usually related to some problem in your life. And I would not start with a full spread or a Celtic cross. Those are usually really big and they involve a lot of cards. Look up like a 3-card spread. So let's say that you're having trouble at work. Just Google like 3-card tarot spread career, or 3-card tarot spread relationship issues, or whatever, you know. One that I really like that I did starting out was what do I need to know, what do I need to grow, and what do I need to let go of. So it's a 3-card spread. You think about a problem in your life or an area of your life where you are seeking some reflection or some greater clarity. You shuffle the deck thinking about that subject area, and then you deal out 3 cards. Boom, boom, boom. The first one is what do I need to know about the problem? And the card represents that. The second card represents what do I need to grow? What skills do I need to develop? What resilience do I need to build up? What do I need to learn more about? What about me do I need to harness more of? And then finally, what do I need to let go of? What do I need to stop worrying about? What do I need to stop trying to make happen? What do I need to just get peace with? Whatever. What patterns are not working for me? Whatever. And each of those 3 cards represent those 3 things. And as you go through, you don't need to memorize what each of these cards represents. There's never any one right answer. As you go through looking at those 3 answers and those 3 cards on that spread, first just look at the imagery in the card and what the card is called, and see what you think the answer might be that you're seeing just based on what you're getting from that card. So if you flip over, what do I need to know? And that card is death. What images do you see on the death card? What is the mood of the card? What does death mean when you're in your career or trouble in a friendship? Whatever it is that you ask the card is about. Then notice whether the card is upright or if it's flipped upside down, because that usually has meaning. And then you'll just do a quick Google, or if you have a book, you can look it up in a book, but you can use the internet for this as well. You can just Google death card meaning or death card reversed meaning, and you'll get a ton of resources on historically what it meant, what some of the symbols and images in the traditional Rider-Waite version of the card meant, and you can kind of incorporate some of those elements and archetypes. Bread Hummus says, I got my first deck from my dad. He had it because he accidentally joined a coven in college. I then illegally downloaded the booklet that explains the cards. How do you accidentally join a coven? Was it like a frat that he pledged and then it turned out to actually be a coven? Because that's amazing. But yeah, these cards have existed, as I said, since like the 13th or 14th century in Europe. A lot of them have common archetypes in them. They have different elements involved in them: fire, water, air, earth. He thought he was taking a class on the history of witches. It was just a group of witches. How... I have some questions about that, but I love it. That is so cool. He joined a coven. I hope he still got credit on his transcript. Be a part of history. Do tarot. The other thing, going back to astrology, is that every tarot card, every major arcana tarot card corresponds to a sign. So Aries, their sign is the Emperor. Or I'm sorry, the Aries sign, the tarot card that corresponds to it, is the Emperor. And it's very funny because just organically from doing tarot reads, randomly shuffling the deck, I repeatedly get results telling me, you are the Emperor, you need to remember you're the Emperor. Like multiple times when I've been going through some shit and I've done a tarot spread. I did this when one of my book deals was didn't go through long before Unmasking Autism sold. It was originally going to be an audiobook with Audible. It was going to be a memoir only. And I'm so glad that that failed. My original publisher, Simon Schuster, would not let me take this Audible book deal, and I was really sad about it. And so I did a little tarot spread, and one of the cards in the spread was a representation of yourself, and it was the Emperor. And so it was like, remember, you're the boss. You're in charge of this. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, but you are the leader of your own projects, and you're going to make this what you want it to be. Yeah, yeah, Aubrey. It said, hey, King, you dropped this. You're the Emperor. Um, and that has just come up multiple times when I've been doing tarot, and so it feels like magic, right? It feels like serendipity, even to me, someone who does not believe in anything metaphysical at all whatsoever. Um, I still keep getting these reminders. You're the Emperor. You're the Emperor, and it's like, damn, I really am. Shit. So that's my recommendations for how to get started in tarot. Find a deck you like. I use major arcana only because it's fewer cards and it's easier to learn what everything means. And again, I'm impatient. I'm an Aries. I want the cliff notes. I want the big, bold messages that the cards have to tell me. I don't want the little shit, you know. So I don't do big spreads. I do simple 3, 4 card spreads, major arcana only. Tell me what I need to know. That's good enough. So I think that's also a great way to start, though I'm sure there would be people who would um, really cringe at that, but that's okay. And if anybody else wants to say, I see Cats asked if people have a favorite card that they identify with. It's for our said my partner's big into tarot and has shown me so many beautiful and inspired trans decks. Yes, queer people love astrology and queer people love tarot. I think in part because we've been dicked over by Christianity so badly, many of us in the US and Europe, and so we reach for something that feels alternative. Strength is my fave, says Abby. Please forgive me if you've already spoken to this, but re Aries in the Emperor card, do you happen to know what Pisces is? I should because I'm a Pisces moon, and my Aries sun and my Pisces moon are forever in war with one another in my mind because I hate my inner sensitive sign. Oh, Sagittarius's card is Temperance. It's the moon. Thank you, Abby. That's right. Which is so like knife to the heart for me. I have a Pisces moon, and the Pisces card is the moon. Which, if you know about either tarot or astrology, both Pisces and the moon card are associated with kind of feminine, watery energies, mutability. It's Pisces. I don't think is a mutable sign, but to like changeability, being shaped by your environment, being sensitive. Pisces is a very kind of introverted and self-reflective sign. Um, it's crying all the time. It's night times. It's moonlight. And so my and hilariously, Aries is kind of the most archetypically masculine astrology sign. It's ruled by Mars, the god of war, the planet of war, and it's associated with making things, starting things, leadership, all of these masculine, sexist kind of uh, archetypes. Cats says, my Mars is in Pisces, pray for me. So you get it. The kind of most feminine sign, well, arguably most feminine sign, Pisces, and the most masculine sign in war with each other. One of the most agentic signs and one of the most, if not passive, responsive and reactive kind of signs together, locking horns with each other. Abby says, Cancer is crying all the time. Ooh, boy. Yes, Cancer is definitely crying all the time, and I do have some thoughts on that, but I've definitely known some Cancers who cried all the time. Um, Sailor Moon, right? Sailor Moon's a Cancer. Sensitivity serves me well as a therapist most of the time. Yeah, well, that goes back to the benefits and the drawbacks of empathy, right? Like being really attuned to other people's emotions and having this ongoing internal simulation of other people's emotions happening inside of you can be a superpower when it's accurate and it's in check, and it can be absolutely exhausting and distracting um, when it's either too powerful or we don't have the right boundaries with it, or we're just not getting the right cues. I heard once that the Aries Sun Pisces Moon combo is called the whale in astrology. That's my autistic dad's combo. He's definitely a powerhouse. I thought a whale. I thought with Pisces it depended on if you were born in March or April. That there's, or wait, February or March, that there's fish Pisces and whale Pisces, depending on which month. Bailey B says, I saw a post the other day about cognitive versus affective empathy, would be the other type of empathy. Um, Basically, there's, yes, so this is in the social psychological literature. There's cognitive empathy, which is something that I think many autistics can relate to, and that's being able to think through what another person's feeling. So cognitive empathy is, here are all of the cues, here are past experiences that I've gone through that remind me of this person's experience. This is me logically thinking through, here's what this person might likely be feeling based on their circumstances. Whereas affective empathy, affect with an A, not an E, is feeling what another person's feeling. Which again, it's a simulation. No empathy is actually feeling someone else's feelings. You could be having a really intense empathetic experience and you could be completely wrong at the exact same time. And that's one of the big downsides of especially neurotypical, if you want to call them that, empathy, that you can think you're feeling someone's pain and you could be completely wrong, even though the emotion you're experiencing is really intense. 6 word story, or Eric says, isn't there something that says all signs are off because of the Earth's axis shift? Yeah, and then there's also that like Aeschylus or whatever the fuck it's called, that other 13th sign. You know, yeah, arguably it's all messed up, but you know, nothing will stop me from identifying with being an Aries. You can pry that fire sign from my cold dead hands. Um, it's just so important to me. Even though I don't believe it's like metaphysically true, you know, like it's just like being a electric fairy Pokemon is important to me. Which, for anybody who hasn't read my piece on replacing Hogwarts houses with Pokemon types, that's on Medium. I'm still trying to make this happen. My pleas for years to replace Hogwarts houses with Pokemon signs has largely fallen on oblivious ears, but I've not given up. Taurus Sun, Cancer Moon. Yeah, that is that's brutal. Because I'm sure, yeah, you want to just be consistent and have things the way that you want them. But then if you're a Cancer, you're also very sensitive to other people's feelings and impressions. Oh, hi, Zanzan45. Thank you for coming to the chat. Dump truck signs. Oh, boy. Dump truck is born a Libra, and he was adopted Aries. So he was 6 months old when I got him, and I got him around my birthday. So he was born in October. Just for convenience, I pretend his birthday is Halloween, but he's born sometime in October. So he's a Libra, but his gotcha day was an Aries day. So he's a Libra Aries. I don't know his moon or his rising. I guess I could probably guess at his rising. I'm not sure though. Trying to see if there's any way to link this on Tumblr, He's a born again Aries. He's been bathed in the lamb's blood of the Aries. Oh, we got some other Taurus Virgo, or wait, Taurus Cancer. I, almost all of my oh, hey, thanks for the follow, Bailey B. Um, yeah, it's very refreshing to get to talk about astrology shit with people because most of my friends are not the kind of gays that like astrology. Um, most of the ram's blood, bathed in the ram's blood. Yes, thank you, Abby. Yeah, so it's nice to talk about this stuff, and most of them aren't super into tarot either, unfortunately. Um, but it's fun, like, and I get it. For a lot of trans people, it's like, why would you identify with something totally influenced just by the circumstances of your birth? Oh, thanks for the follow, Zamzam45. It's nice that the stream setup that I'm using right now just naturally comes with follow announcements like this. Any new frags? No, no. So everyone here, I will let you in behind the scenes. Eric and Maddie and I are gonna do a fragrance testing live stream sometime soon. It would have been nice to have been able to do it in December as kind of like a gift guide kind of stream, like a little December gift guide kind of stream. I don't know if it's going to actually work out schedule wise because Maddie's traveling. Maddie and Megan are coming to visit this coming week, and you know, like my partner and I are going to Ohio for Christmas. Like it's going to be a little tense, but we are going to sample basically, I think it was on Perfumed Court. They have a sampler that's 12 months of fragrances. It's from a bunch of different fragrance houses, a bunch of different notes and styles of fragrance. So it's a really nice sample platter of fragrances, which I think will be really good for Maddie as somebody who's kind of new to fragrances to get to just sit her down and say, okay, let's sample a bunch of different things to see what you like and see what your taste is. Oh, one got replaced in the set. Oh, okay. I haven't gotten mine yet, so but I'm gonna order it, and I'm also gonna have one sent to Maddie. But I think we might save that for also to let you guys behind the scenes. We are gonna do sometime soon, probably after Christmas, a big push to affiliate, which means that we'll have to stream to qualify as an affiliate on Twitch. You have to stream 7 times in a month, so that works out to basically 2 times a week. So we're going to be doing a lot more streams. Thank you for the follow, Selbokyo. Welcome. Right now we're just talking about fragrances. I'm a hypersensitive smeller, and it's both a blessing and a curse. Cats, cats, cats. Yeah. Um, it's really nice for if you are a sensory sensitive, autistic, or neurodivergent person. I've found that getting into fragrances has made it easier for me to notice individual fragrance notes. Like I can just be walking down the street now and I can go, oh, there must be gardenias around because I smell gardenias or I smell violets. And it's made it easier for me to appreciate different flavors in cooking and to just kind of appreciate and savor sensations a lot more. And it's been a fun tool to hone, like being able to isolate certain fragrance notes. But I'm also someone who, if a fragrance is really strong, if it has that real like barbershop cologne, fake leather, also kind of smell, anything that's like a really strong, stereotypically masculine cologne gives me a headache like a motherfucker. What's your least favorite smell in nature? Ooh. You know that kind of like swampy smell that's like kind of like brackish, you know? That like musty brackish swamp smell. So not like the like warm kind of rotting earth kind of smell that you might also smell in like a wet natural environment. That's fine. Like peat, that's kind of fine. But like a more alkaline swampiness is really disgusting. The old and tangy river, yes. Zam Zam, you must be a Columbus uh, resident or an OSU grad because the old and tangy river in Columbus smells so fucking bad. Oh my god. It smells not rotted because rotted suggests life. You know, decay is part of the life cycle. If something is decaying and rotting and mushroomy, life is growing over it and breaking it down and taking it apart and making it into something new. Whereas, and I'm sure this is also true with more like alkaline swampiness, but like it just smells wrong. It smells unnatural. It's like a naturally created, like zombie robot sickening smell. And that is what the Olentangy River in Columbus smells like. It's just the worst smell. Does anybody else have any favorite or least favorite uh, fragrance notes, scents? Anyone ever else smelled ginkgo tree seeds? My undergrad campus had a huge ginkgo tree, and the seeds smelled so bad. I think. Let me look up what a ginkgo tree looks like, because I think I have. That sounds familiar. Ginkgo. Ginkgo tree. Very stinky seeds. There's a plant here that smells like cannabis called skunk cabbage. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the ginkgo tree. There's also here in Chicago we have a lot of I don't know what tree it is, but it's kind of light green leaves, small white flowers, and it smells like semen. It just straight up smells like semen. If anybody knows what tree that is, I'll Google it because I don't want to get banned for using that word too much. I don't know if Twitch cares about that. What was that? The Bradofo pear? I missed that. Bradford pear. Tomato plants smell lovely to me. I've spent hours trestling tomato vines, and it's 100% worth getting tomato gunk on your hands. Tomatoes are so slimy that they're really like tricky for me. I really don't like I don't like how violets smell. I don't like how violet leaves smell. It's like that kind of like dark green, velvety, gunky kind of smell. It's just too earthy. It's too intense. It's like a dark, jammy, clotted. It's just too much. Tree that smells like semen. Calorie pear. That cummy smell comes from a flowering deciduous tree called Pyrus caloriana, better known in Australia as the ornamental pear, or the calorie pear in the US. Originating from China, calorie pear became the urban designer's tree of choice in the 1950s because they're small, neat, and produce cute white flowers. Yep, this is the guy. Let me pull up a tree. Yeah, so they're like little white flowers with like little tiny greenish yellow stamens. They're very pretty and I think pretty hardy. They're all over Chicago and they smell like semen. Petriocore is one of my favorite natural smells. It's really nice. It's really complex. So even though it is like Tumblr, oh I love the smell of the fresh rain, like aesthetic, like these things become cliches for a reason. Cherry and apple blossoms, very good. We call the cum trees yew trees in the UK. Not sure if the exact same thing, but they definitely do smell like cum. Thank you, It's Farrar. I didn't realize you were in the UK. Wow. So you've been joining us in the evenings usually. I'm glad the time difference has ended up working out for you, because that's always been a struggle in picking stream times, is accommodating people's time zone differences. Yew trees. It seems like these trees are invasives that were introduced by gardeners in the 50s. So I would imagine that if they were popular in the US, they might have also been in the UK. And that might be why we have so many of them these days. Let's see if I missed anything in the chat. I used to have a boss who said onions make your plasma smell weird if they eat a lot the day or before after you get tattooed by him. Oh, that's interesting. You seems like what a UK O-face would sound like, so this all checks out. And they also say YouTube like YouTube over there. YouTube. So, you know. I mean, God love you, but British people, y'all are so silly with it. Like, you say some silly stuff. And we love it. Rose Rain says, I have no idea what it was, but my aunt's landscaping had something that smelled like cat urine, and it was just the worst. And no, it wasn't just pee outside. It was like the air was filled with it. It was a tree/bush. Okay, I was going to say, because of course gardeners sometimes use wolf urine to discourage rabbits from coming to their plants and eating things. Or coyote urine sometimes to discourage, I think, dogs as well. Could be the currants. I've never known how to pronounce that fruit. Currants? Bread Hummus says. Okay. I need to actually post this stream link in Tumblr before I forget. Okay, go to creator mode, live. Is there a share button? Currants give off a cat piss smell. Okay, that must be it then. How do I share my own thing? Where do I find the link? See, this is why I need Maddie so severely. I'm afraid to change anything. I was gonna pull up my Tumblr ask box and we'd go through some questions that I have from people that I've been meaning to answer and get to, but I'm so afraid that the connection is just gonna chug like a motherfucker if I so much as breathe. Hi, Emily. This is one of the first of your lives I've been able to attend. I'm so excited and happy to be here. Thanks for being here. This is a really casual one, but it's been going really well. Like, I think the upside of not having a ton of activity happening on the screen is that I'm watching the chat more and I'm getting to hear from you guys more and talk more. So that's been going really nice. So far we've just been talking about like astrology, getting started with tarot, fragrances, autism versus ADHD, all kinds of fun things. And so it's been really nice. Eric, while I'm figuring out how to post this on Tumblr, why don't you tell me and the chat about like any fragrances that you've found in a bit, because I'm still waiting on that. Well, I still need to order the 12 months of fragrance, but I don't have anything new to report on. No, come on. I'm just ordering the moderator monkeys to dance and they refuse. God. Can't get good help for free these days. No, shut up. Damn. I'm Emily, the Autistic Therapist. On TikTok, I posted a video of your book in my office. I'm also autistic and I'm a witch too. That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so pleased and surprised anytime someone from TikTok makes their way over to anything else of mine because I'm so not active on that platform. Um, I guess I really am an aging millennial at this point. Let's see. Chubby Kumquat. I have a question I would have asked during the FurFest stream. Do furries not do face paint? I'd hate a mask on my face, but paint would be okay. Oh, I'm glad that I actually saw your video, Emily. I'm bad at checking notifications, so I'm glad that I saw it. And thank you for making it. It's crazy how much TikTok has done for the book. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, but it's completely changed the game. Um, oh yeah, Aubrey. Yeah, it keeps popping. People on TikTok are loving the book, and it's really crazy to me that TikTok is actually selling some books. It's moving some product. So as much as I want to think that TikTok is evil and anti-literary and spreads conspiracy theories and like all of the negative things people used to say about every other social media platform, like part of me, because I'm overwhelmed by TikTok, I have some of those feelings and biases. I just got a report from my UK publisher, Monterey, showing the TikTok effect is not only really boosting the number of book buyers year over year since 2020, it's really actually making people actually read more as well. So it's great. Okay, so to wind back for a second and talk about furries. For the most part, furries don't do face paint. Um, Usually furries are pretty, dyed in the wool, if you'll excuse the pun, into, foam based or 3D printed heads with fabric over them. You will also see latex. I just ordered a latex deer hood because it's a lot cheaper than a furry hood, and I'll get a lot of uses out of it in furry spaces and, kink spaces and just like any event where I want to turn up looking really wild. Um, and that was about $200, whereas a fursuit head is usually 1,000, 2,000. You'd be hard pressed to get a good fursuit head for under 1,000. Furries will use muzzles, pup play hoods. You see a lot of people wearing neoprene pup play hoods. Um, but you won't generally see face paint as much. But there's no reason not to do it. Like you see cat girls at FurFest, people with just cat ears, people wearing just ears and tails. That's really popular. Most people who go to Fur Fest and other furry conventions cannot yet afford a full fursuit. A full fursuit is 5 grand, 3, 5 grand. Excuse me. Sometimes more like 10 grand if you're getting something made custom, which usually people want their persona, their original character, to be made rather than buying something that already exists. So a lot of furries can't afford to wear that. Um, and so, yeah, a lot. So face paint would be totally kosher. You don't see it as much. You see little appendages, snouts, teeth, mostly ears and tails, and paws. But there's no reason you couldn't do face paint instead. So cat hair everywhere. I saw you mention fantasy fragrances, or right? I think Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab BPA, right? They might be someone you would be into. I personally hate their fragrances. Every single one I've tried like a dozen of their fragrances and they are disgusting to me. They smell rancid. I think it's because they have like a coconut oil base. But that can make it a good thing for a lot of other people. And they make like D&D character themed fragrances. All of their fragrances are like witch and rogue and warlock kind of shit. So lots of fantasy notes. Oh, and we're having some conversations about masking as well as about fragrances in the chat. I'm loving this. Oh my god, thank you so much, everyone. Oh yeah, okay. Blackbird. Eric just mentioned Blackbird. They, I Blackbird is also a really interesting fragrance house to try out. Cold Cave Death is a fragrance that Eric recommended I try from them. It is a dark purple liquid that will stain your clothing, so they recommend you only wear it if you're wearing black. So it is a fragrance for goths, and it smells like a cave burial. There's incense. There's kind of a salty, I'll say brackish, but it's not quite as disgusting as the swamp smell I was talking about earlier. But this like clammy, cold cave smell, it really feels kind of almost like cool air on your skin when you smell it. There's a smokiness, and there's also notes of sage. It is a really interesting fragrance. It's really unique. I loved it and wore the shit out of it when I first got it. I was wearing a lot of kind of industrial and, like black goth kind of alternative stuff at the time too, so it really worked. Um, and it's but they just make amazing shit. Pipe Bomb is amazing. The banana and burnt electronics fragrance is amazing. A friend of mine once said the most important thing about a container of yogurt is the label, because without being told something tasted like key lime, you'd think it just smells like shit. We eat with our eyes first, most of us. So, yes, color matters, scent matters, framing matters, packaging matters. All of these things shape our sensory experiences. Stains orange on white clothes. Oh, that's awful. Oh, God, I hope it didn't ruin. It sounds like it probably ruined some nice wedding drip you were wearing. It's for our. Ugh. But yes, fragrances can be so transportive. Oh, I'm walking in a dark wood. I have a lot of kind of coconut noted fragrances that I really only save for like vacations and travel. Anything with kind of a beachy, warm kind of smell or resort kind of smell. Um, like Tom Ford's Eau de Soleil Blanc, Essence of the White Sun, or whatever it means. I only wear that if I'm going to be outside on vacation in the sun. So then it just has this association in my mind with leisure and fun. So that's really nice. Hi, Photo. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Good to see you. I hope you didn't get the con crud. I caught the con crud. You can maybe kind of hear it in my voice. Okay, yes, let me catch up a little bit on this conversation about masking and autism self-discovery and diagnosis that I've been missing in the chat here. Um, yeah, some sense, yeah, Extreme Noir, I did wear it in New Orleans last summer, but it's definitely more of a winter fragrance. It doesn't quite shit the same. Let's see. Oh, good. I see Eric was kind of talking about the distinction between ambergris versus amber, or what the various things amber means. So it's for our. I don't know if you've been aware of how big the book became on TikTok. It is the book for newly diagnosed folks. Yeah, I think. So I talked a little bit earlier in this stream about how originally Unmasking Autism was going to be a memoir. It was going to be an audio only memoir for Audible. And then that got canned. And that, if it had gone that way, it would have come out probably in 2020. And it would have been like 60,000 words. It would have been significantly shorter, 50, 60,000 words instead of the 90,000 words that it is. It would have been almost entirely personal. And instead, I got a lot more time to work on it, and I had to go back to the drawing board to find something else I could sell to a different publisher because that deal got killed. And that worked out very well because it meant that I ended up making something that was a lot more research-based and something that was a lot more outward-facing and informed by interviews. And its release really coincided with a lot of people making an autism self-discovery on places like TikTok, which, talking again about the parallels between Tumblr and TikTok, a lot of people are experiencing on TikTok the same kind of gender and autism journeys now that I experienced on Tumblr, 8 years ago. So I don't know. It's worked out exactly as best as I could have possibly hoped, the book coming out working, because it got to be as political as I wanted it to be, um, and really talk about things like prison abolition as being core to unmasking. And it's also a guidebook for autistic people by autistic people. And it seems to be reaching a lot of people just now as they're going through that self discovery. And the TikTok effect is so real. The first week that Unmasking Autism came out in April, it sold 1,400 copies in that week, which is good. For reference point, Laziness sold 800-ish on its first week, which is also pretty good. After Unmasking Autism started popping off on TikTok a couple of months ago, it's pretty consistently been selling 2,000 to 2,500 copies a week instead. So week after week, it's doing better than its first week, which that is really rare, because usually your first week of sales includes your pre-sales, your pre-orders, and it just, you have the most social media momentum on your first week, and interviews and stuff, and events. So Unmasking Autism getting so much attention, and it happened at a time when I was off social media, it is purely attributable to the TikTok effect. It's autistic people sharing it with other autistic people, and people reacting to clips of the audiobook, exercises in the book, sharing their own stories. It's I can't feel the full weight of like how much it's connected to other people, but you know, like I know what it means to have a book be that important to me, so I can kind of imagine it, and it's like, I don't know, it's so weird that I get to do something like that, and be part of something like that. So thank you for everyone who has talked about it. Thank you for the follow, Takashi. Shirigane. Let me scroll back up for that chat about Black autistic experiences, because that was something I really wanted to get as right as I possibly could. And okay, Emily said, for my master's program, instead of a thesis, we had to do a presentation, and I did one on on the hurdles that remain for African American children that they face to get diagnosed. When I heard your book, that you were talking about African American barriers to, it was so validating that I'm on the right track and really helping other autistic people. Yeah, and that was something that was just really important to me to get right, because so much of the conversation about masking and misdiagnosis and underdiagnosis has been white, female centered, and talking about female autism. And I really, really wanted people to detach from thinking that that's what's going on here. I really wanted these white women autistics who are struggling to realize that their struggle is wrapped up in the struggle of Black autistic folks and incarcerated people. And I think, especially thanks to the writing of people like Anand Prahlad and Christina Obey Sumner and all of these other Black autistic scholars and thinkers, the information was already there, ready to be synthesized into an explanatory model. And it's just something that all of the books that are about white autistic girl autism, predominantly white autistic girl autism, your Asper girls, etc. No matter how well intended those projects were and how much healing and validation they brought to certain groups of people, they weren't going far enough, and they weren't really explaining why these populations get overlooked. So, yeah, I'm glad people are ready for that conversation. Again, it seems like the timing was there, because people were really having those conversations in the last few years more than before, and publishing was willing to actually put a little weight behind these things, when historically and in an ongoing way, publishing is very conservative. It's very white supremacist. It's very cis sexist. So it was good that we were in a cultural moment where these things could be brought to the fore a little bit more. Oh gosh, there's so much happening in the chat that's good that I want to respond to. And I'm also very bad at scrolling through the chat. Someone kind of shitting on the self-discovery TikTok has promoted. Is there a dark side to how TikTok works? And are there people who profit off of self-diagnosis culture in nefarious ways? Yes. Jesse Meadows, I think, has talked about that a lot in the context of ADHD self-diagnosis and medication being marketed to people. And I've said this stuff before, but I'll just say, like, I support people using any substance that they want to use. Um, I think we should all be the authorities on our own bodies and what we need and how we go about meeting our needs. And there are lots of different ways that we all use substances to do that. So I am not against antidepressants. I'm not against Ritalin or Vivans or whatever else people want to take. Um, and I also, obviously, as an anti-capitalist, see how pharmaceutical companies profit off of presenting medication as a solution to a societal problem and doing that while obscuring the risks associated with certain medications. So I want, informed consent for everyone on all medications and all substances. We should all have the right to do that. Thanks for following, Rainmon. LOL, that was so fucking bougie. Vivance. It's Vivance. Vivance. I don't know. I'm not an ADHDer. This is my ADHD medication. Duncan. Like a true Eastern time zone. Vi like hi. Did I say Vivance? Listen. This is a thing about me. Every vowel to me is a schwa. Every vowel to me is a schwa. Like, I'll always default to using the most like weak-wristed, limp little faggoty vowel if I don't know what a vowel otherwise is. Oh yeah, and some people are on stimulants without having an ADHD diagnosis, and the and the Vivance Rose Vivance. If you could estimate what's the actual percentage of the population that's autistic? This is a great question. My publisher also asked me to estimate this. Here's what I'll say. The most conservative estimate that I would say is that it's double whatever we currently think it is. So it's like 20% of the population instead of like 10% or whatever. Thanks for the follow, Gwyneth B. Sorry. And the reason that I say it has to be at least double what we currently think it is because in the US at least, half of all Americans lack access to mental health care. And even more than that, lack access to an autism assessment because many insurance plans won't follow it. Thank you for the follow, Claire Milnes 992. Thanks for joining. So at the very least, we're missing half of all autistics because half of them can't even begin to go down the path of getting even therapy, let alone getting an assessment for autism. But we already know, again, for a lot of reasons I outline in the book, that autism assessments aren't fair. Lots of people get turned away from an autism assessment even if they do have a therapist. And so it has to be far more than that. Also, autism is very othered in general therapy, right? Even if you have access to, let's say, really good mental health insurance, the odds are really good if you're autistic that you'll go to a therapist and they won't know how to treat you and they won't know how to react to you because they've been trained to empathize with patients in a certain way, to read emotions in a certain way, to radiate emotions back at their patients in a very particular way, and so on. And Emily, yeah, there's more and more therapists out there who will validate self-realization in an autistic patient and will kind of trust them to say, hey, you know yourself best. Let's talk through this as a tool. But unfortunately, there's still many more therapists who are not welcoming to that. I have never brought up autism with a therapist, and I'm very hesitant to do so in the future because I think the experience will be so invalidating. Yeah, yeah, that is very common. Um, Bailey B asks, "Do you prefer self-realization to self-diagnosis in terms of language we use?" Um, so I don't think it super matters. Like I would never correct someone on using self-diagnosis, but I think we need to move away from the idea of diagnosis as what defines us. Like I wouldn't describe myself as a self-diagnosed trans person, even though and I am. Right? Like I did not get a gender identity disorder diagnosis. I went to a nurse practitioner and I said, "I'm transgender. Give me the shit." And they said, "Okay, here's the shit." And I had testosterone by the end of the next day. I'm a self-diagnosed transgender person. But that's a weird way to talk about it because I don't think transness is a pathology. I don't think pathology is a helpful framework for understanding what transness is. And as a community, trans people have moved away from, appealing to the psychiatric systems of power and instead have tried to reclaim control over our bodies and our lives. And so I use self realized for autism in the same way. We realize we're gay. We realize we're queer. We come into queer society. And I think it's the exact same thing with autism. Um, I'm not a big fan of language policing. I think focusing too much on language instead of the systems and the logic that give birth to that language can be a real waste of our time and energy. Um, but personally, for me, I describe it as self-realized. I'm chaotic and jokingly refer to myself as a manic pixie dream girl to downplay and dismiss the struggles I have because of that bubbly persona or mask. Oh yes, and I do narrate the book. It was really fun to record, and it was surprisingly easy. I thought it would be grueling. It was done in like 3 days, and like it helped me understand my own writing better. So now as I'm working on this third book, I'm like, this sentence is too long. If I want to read this MFer out loud, I'm gonna need to cut it in half. Um, so God, the chat just be moving too quick. My therapist often doesn't know how to properly comfort me as an autistic person. They try to use the thinking traps theory on me, and it just frustrates me. And telling me that this probably won't happen isn't comforting to me. Yes. So to respond to that, was that Bread Hummus who said that? Yeah. It sounds like your therapist is really talking about, or is really using a lot of kind of cognitive behavioral therapy kind of tactics. No, don't ban anyone, Eric. No, we have a really popping chat today. This is an excellent problem to have. I'm not having to vamp at all. So please keep it going. There's a lot of research suggesting that CBT really does not work well on most autistics because we are already over cognitizing, if you will, our emotions. We already naturally, not naturally, thanks to social conditioning telling us that our feelings are invalid, we're already constantly asking ourselves, is this feeling rational? Is this thought rooted in reality? Is there evidence of this fear? And a lot of the time, our fears are rooted in real life experiences, so they're not irrational. And we're just conditioned to teach ourselves that we're overreacting. And yeah, as Photo says, it can be used to kind of gaslight us at times. Do I think CBT has its place? Absolutely. Are there CBT strategies that I still use and have used throughout my life? Absolutely. But a lot of therapists do not know how to apply it to autistic people's lives or really to any marginalized person, if you ask me. Because if you have been treated as suspect your whole life, it's not irrational to not trust other people. Like, it's just a reasonable self protective strategy. And a lot of those thoughts are due to experience. And so, more of a trauma informed practice can be better. I've heard a lot of good things about internal family systems. Narrative therapy, I really like. I love all of the existential therapies and any kind of meaning making or narrative therapy that's all about what are the stories that you tell yourself about your life, and what are some ways that you can recast that to tell yourself a more empowering story, that's still true, where you're really highlighting some of the some of the victories that you've won that maybe you're not giving yourself credit for. I think that can be great. And DBT, yes, thank you, Cat Hair Everywhere. I really like DBT. It has its limits as well. In practice, a lot of DBT practitioners aren't actually letting the patient be fully in control of their own experience. And they impose certain standards of like, oh, you need to get sober, you need to stop self-harming. When I think what we should do is marry dialectical behavioral therapy with radical harm reduction or liberatory harm reduction, and together basically say to a patient, okay, you're using alcohol, you're using self harm, you're using drugs, you're using obsessing over someone that you just met for a reason. You're getting something out of these behaviors. What needs are these behaviors meeting? What are the costs that come with meeting your needs in this way? Are these costs things you're going to choose to accept and maybe minimize the harm of in some way? Or is this something that you want to change and find an alternate way of meeting those needs? And there is no wrong or right answer to that question. We can't force another person to change. We can't force another person to decide that they don't want to use substances anymore or that they don't want to cut anymore. We can't make someone do that. And it might be that for the situation they're in and with the values that they have, using those coping strategies might actually be what they've decided works the best for them or all that they can do. And they don't want to change it. In which case, all we should do is just offer them resources to help minimize harm if that's what they want to do. Because there are safer ways to use substances. There's safer ways to self-harm. There's safer ways to obsess over a person who doesn't know you exist. Like all of these things that we deem as bad and self-destructive. That evaluation kind of makes it harder for us to think carefully and specifically about why the behavior is happening and what a person gets out of it. And so that's the shit I'm on lately, is liberatory harm reduction. And if you want to read more about liberatory harm reduction, and any mental health professionals in the chat, I would strongly recommend it. The book Saving Our Own Lives by Shira Hassan. It just came out a couple months ago. And Haymarket Books sent me a free copy of it, just like, without me having to ask. And I loved it. It really has... and I've been talking about it a lot in my most recent writing on Medium. I just had a piece go live last week that talks about liberatory harm reduction, and I have another one coming out soon that's talking about eating disorders from a harm reduction perspective instead of an abstinence or recovery first perspective. And I think it's a really interesting conversation, because even the worst behaviors we engage in, we do it for a reason. And understanding those reasons and trusting another person to determine their own reasoning and what they need to do, it really changes the game. Had a client put tape on their arm every time they apologized for no reason rather than asking what he was thinking or what was motivating that apology. And I just did not like that idea as an intervention. Yeah, honestly, fuck the stop apologizing culture. I hate that shit. I hate any approach to the insecurity of marginalized people that says that we need to solve our own insecurity by apologizing less, by speaking more confidently, by, people sometimes talk about it in terms of behaving more like a white man, which as an arrogant white man, y'all don't all necessarily want to be like me, there's plenty of things wrong with me. Yes, that's the book. Thank you, Cats. Really good book, and very approachable. And it talks about a variety of different issues and stigmatized behaviors, from sex work to eating disorders to self harm to suicide. It's really an interesting discussion of these topics. But Deshaun Harrison, who wrote Belly of the Beast, um, they talk about how the insecurity of a fat black person is an indictment of the culture that made them feel that way. So if you are insecure in your body, that's not a personal failure. Thanks for the follow, Mix Bureau. If you feel like there's something wrong with your body because society has told you that, that is not a personal failing. That's something society did to you, and it's not your responsibility to fix all of it. And this is what a lot of my next book is about. Um, I think Cats, or maybe Cat Hair Everywhere. One of the cats asked about this. But my next book, its working title right now is Healing from Systemic Shame. And systemic shame is my term for when we take on all the responsibility as individuals for societal problems that are systemic. So when we say that a black person needs to solve the problem of their own oppression by joining all the DEI committees at work, by educating white people about racism, by teaching people about racism, but always doing it in a pleasant tone, that's systemic shame. When a fat person feels like they have to overcome fat phobia by loving their body all the time, that's systemic shame. It's an individualistic solution to a societal problem, and it will never work because the problem is systemic. The problem is societal. And so what we really need to do, I think, and I'm arguing in this next book, is that we need to recognize, obviously, the shared roots of our problems. And we need to, on some level, I think, radically accept ourselves as being affected by the culture and the moment that we're in. And so for some of us, the path to healing is not body confidence. It's not apologizing less. It's not acting more like a white man and striving for that kind of individualistic power. It is accepting who we are in the context we're in, which means there is no undoing the past. There is no undoing having lived with transphobia all your life. You might always feel some dysphoria. You might always feel some body insecurity. You might always apologize for speaking up. Who fucking cares? That's not a problem, Like, there's nothing shameful in reflecting the moment that you're born in and being a social animal who's affected by social effects. Like, of course that's going to happen. What we need is justice. What we need is a change to these systems. We don't need to change ourselves first. And I think there's really something, I hope. I mean, I've been working on this goddamn book for a year and a half, so I hope there's something to it. So that's kind of something that I'm trying to kind of synthesize and bring together in this work. Individualism means letting go of bi-essentialist fundamentals of science. Yeah, a lot of psychology and psychiatry aims to isolate a person or isolate a variable from all of the other variables connected to it, which, when we're talking about human beings, is actually impossible. Now, does that mean that controlled clinical trials are a bad idea or are white supremacist? Not always, right? Like, I'm glad that we have the tool that is science, even though it is used often in really short-sighted and violent and white supremacist ways. Like, it's good to try and isolate cause and effect to understand, does this medication work? Like, does this vaccination work? But we can't actually ever isolate these variables in practice if we're talking about human beings. There's no way to just design an experiment and conclude, for example, this is the ideal way to teach reading to all children, because every child exists in a different cultural context and family system and has their own unique biology and neurodivergence and media they consume. Like, we are all unique. These variables are all unique, and we are all interacting with a variety of different variables constantly. And so there is no divorcing a person from their context. There is no saying this behavior was caused by you having ADHD. This behavior is because you were raised evangelical. Like, those things are factors, and we can see trends in those factors predicting certain experiences. But there's a lot of different roads that lead to similar feelings and experiences. And we can see the parallels between ourselves and the experiences of someone else, even if what they're going through wasn't caused by ADHD. It was caused by, being in a really distracting or something. Thanks for the follow, Vetchi GM, Vetchi G MM. Nope, person is an island. And yes, and that's why we need universal design for learning. Though, of course, for that very same reason, there is no true singular universal design. And no event or resource can be accessible to every single person. Because every person has their own accessibility needs, and has their own ways in which what's good for one person might be really distracting and disabling for another person. Shit is complicated. And just accepting that and kind of giving up the desire to understand every single thing and to know everything, I think is also important here in this conversation. I think there's a humility to realizing how interconnected everything is. Woo! Woo! Y'all got me on a rant. Y'all got a little preview of the next Bookie Wookie, so that's good. I hope it connects with people. It's a little bit more explicitly political than my last two books, so it really might flop, but I'm proud of it. Do you think accessibility as a word is going to lose meaning or become reflective to works put in the same way that size inclusivity has become more of a red flag? Oh, Kelly, my love. You know it. You fucking know it. Yes. The short answer is yes. I think neurodiversity is going through this path. And I tweeted about this like last year that I was like, y'all, I'm worried neurodiversity is going to become like body positive or like self-care, in that it's a thing that a lot of workplaces use to offload responsibility onto the individual and to act like, rather than what we need is justice, they act like what we just need is diversity in representation. Oh, interconnectedness is so hard to put in practice with people. That is also a big part of what the book is about. As someone who also has really struggled to trust other people or to even want to connect to other people. And I'm like finally starting to figure some of that shit out after years of not even trying or not wanting to try because I found people so exhausting and scary. So that's also something that's kind of getting worked into the book too, because I think for me, what it's meant is communities are just relationships. There's this big lofty idea of finding your community that a lot of us, I think a lot of white queer people especially, shoot for. And I think that's actually a very colonialist idea, that we'll just find a community that already exists and insert ourselves within it. That's not how it works. Communities are just networks of relationships. And so if we want to find community, what we actually have to do is build relationships one at a time. And it's painstaking shit. It requires you confront a lot of your worst or least effective, whatever you want to call it, impulses and reactions, and developing new interpersonal and self-advocacy skills. It means getting called out sometimes or getting told that you're thwarting the very thing you claim to want. It's very vulnerable stuff. And a lot of times it's hard for people to even find the time and the energy to try to embark on that shit under capitalism. And yeah, B. Bailey B. And for anyone else who resonates with this, in 2020, I wrote a piece on Medium called Against Community. So if you just Google that, like Devin Price, Medium, Against Community, you'll find it. And that is a piece really describing how, after I saw a lot of activist groups and queer community groups come apart at the seams, I got really down on the idea of community, um, and couldn't ever see how a community would ever be anything but a controlling cult or a family that silences any person who's a dissenting voice. And a good friend of mine, after I published that, kind of took me aside in person. He like met up with me by the beach, and he said, like, this really concerns me. It makes me really sad that you feel this way, and and here are some things that I've noticed in how you handle community spaces and the way you try to make yourself a leader all the time when you're putting together communities, and the way that you try to make sure everyone gets along in communities, in ways that are creating some of the same problems that you hate in other leaders and that you worry about and find stifling. And so maybe part of why you feel so confined by communities is you're putting all this pressure on yourself to make every community a big happy family, when you know that that doesn't work from your own experience, just how oppressive and silencing that can be. And I hated that. I hated hearing that, and he was completely right. And it had a really big influence on me, and helped me make sense of some problems I had had in various friend groups and spaces. So, and in the years since, I've done a lot less of that kind of emotional control, smoothing over every conflict, making myself the figurehead of these little friendship cults. Yes, self pressure, the old and current nemesis. Yes, the call was coming from inside the house. And I think this is true for a lot of autism maskers, a lot of empaths, quote unquote, a lot of people who feel all this pressure to keep everyone else happy. We end up resenting other people for having needs. And the real problem is we are holding ourselves responsible for meeting every single person's needs when literally nobody asked. Or if they did ask, it was like a parent who was treating us as a spouse when we were a child and should have never been asking that of us. And we need to quit trying to do that shit because it was never healthy. There was a concept in British conservatives called the big society. It really woke me up to how community and shared responsibility can be deeply regressive. Ooh, thank you for that connection. It's for our... yeah. Sometimes when we talk about community responsibility and what a person owes to society, it's all about conformity. And this is why I am not like a big state communist. I'm more of an anarchist and a libertarian socialist, if you will. I really, 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 really just am so averse to people being coerced into doing things that they don't want to do. And that can come from state violence, like the police or the military, and it can also come from more covert social pressure, such as, if you don't agree that we're a big happy family, you don't get to eat tonight, or nobody smiles at you ever again. We withdraw all social warmth from you. And I think we see that in social conservatism, but also in left-wing authoritarianism, as Bob Altemeyer would call it. I've recently realized my ability to set boundaries gets fucked when my basic needs aren't being met. Boom. It is impossible to assert your autonomy when your ability to eat and bathe and clothe yourself is contingent on you behaving in a particular way. And so that is a big problem with some models of how are we as a society after capitalism going to take care of people. And that's why I am really not a fan of communism in the big state sense of the term. And this is being very overly simplistic. I think most of us we have the same goals, even if we have some disagreement on tactics of how to get there. I just really don't want there to ever be some coercive body that has control over people. And that can be either a small community that acts like a cult, or a family that silences the victims of abuse, or it can be a state. Cat hair everywhere. What do you do when people try to guilt you into hanging out when you want to leave? Um, I hate that shit. I personally will just, I don't know how to translate this into practical terms, but I will just say, like, I'm leaving, or I'll Irish goodbye. Thanks for the follow, Midwife Crises. Very cute name. And thank you for sharing that resource, B Bailey B. I think I've read that one, and I think it misplaces the root issue, but I think it's still basically talking about neoliberalism and kind of um, letting individualistic solutions and language changes rule everything instead of thinking about systems. But I don't think the problem itself is therapy speak. I think therapy speak is just emblematic of the problem. Um, but backing up a bit, and I hope other people share their responses too, because I think this is a great question. I used to roll with these people in this theater company who were very extroverted, very loving, sweet. I liked them a lot. We were really close friends. But if you wanted to leave the function, they would guilt and whine so bad. And I would just straight up, because I knew they were people who cared about like social justice concepts, I would be like, I would just be like, if they were starting to pressure me, I would like snap my fingers and I'd be like, I am exercising my consent right now. I'm going home. Like, or I would just leave. And I would just let them feel what they felt, because some of them were very sensitive, empath extroverts who wanted everyone to be around all the time. They wanted people to get along all the time. And so if I just left, if I just turned my back on them and walked out, yeah, they were sad. That's okay. You like have to kind of build up comfort with other people being upset. At first, it will feel like hell, and you're going to think, I'm being abandoned. I'm a terrible person. I need to explain. I need to apologize. If I said no to this thing, I need to say yes to this thing to make up for it. Treating your boundaries as this transactional thing that you need to earn or buy, and that is not true. You have to just do the thing. You don't feel better first and then change your behavior. This is also a DBT thing. You change your behavior, and then you get more and more comfortable with how that behavior feels. So you don't need to know the exact right thing to say. There is no magic script or a snappy comeback that will make someone respect you if they don't respect you. What you do is you respect you, and you comport yourself in a way that conveys you respect you, and then that follows. And the people either learn and get used to it and stop whining as much because the whining doesn't work, or they kind of cleave themselves off from your life, if they're really a shitbag, or they start learning that maybe, hey, they had some weird rules and expectations too. Cats says being disabled and financially dependent on others makes it hard to maintain autonomy. Yes, it's impossible. In fact, if you are reliant on other people for resources, they have a power over you, and power over others will always be abused, even by the nicest, most well-intentioned friend or caregiver or parent. Unjust power should never exist, and people will always misuse it. And so then, and that's why there is so much abuse of disabled people and children, and why women are most likely abused by people they live with and are financially dependent upon. In those situations, one strategy that you might want to use, or that many people learn to use, is something called gray rocking. And gray rocking is you do not give the other person a large response. You don't perform emotions for them. You don't give them the signs of frustration or anxiety that they desire. You just go along with what's going on as much as you need to, but otherwise you're just a gray rock. You're just flat. You're not giving a lot of enthusiasm. You're not saying much. You're not justifying anything or explaining anything. You're just there. And a lot of abusers, or people who are abusing power, gray rocking will frustrate them because they're not getting as much stimulation out of it. And they can't point to anything you've done wrong because, hey, You're going where they told you to go. You're not refusing to do the thing they're asking you to do, but it sure doesn't feel very satisfying because you're not faking enthusiasm anymore. So when you're stuck with an abuser or stuck going through an abusive system, which unfortunately many of us have to do, gray rocking is a way to kind of just preserve your energy and not worsen conflict. But it can be really traumatizing to have to do in the long term if you don't have other places to go where you can be your full vibrant self. Nobody wants to be a gray rock all the time. But at workplaces, in abusive parental relationships, with abusive caregivers, gray rocking is a very good survival strategy a lot of the time. Gwyneth B says, in my house where we're all some kind of disabled and have a weird mishmash of combined resources, it makes it feel impossible for anyone to leave. Yeah. This is a dynamic that can get toxic even if no person in it is ill-intentioned. And this is unfortunately a problem that a lot of like queer polycules get into or disabled friend groups get into. Through no one's fault. It's just the nature of things being so precarious. Society has a lot of expectations on how we're supposed to behave with our families that make it much harder to take care of yourself. That's the bigger issue for me currently. Yeah, chubby kumquat. That is hard. And there, the answer or like what you want to do depends so much on how dependent are you on family members for money or, rides to work or, helping you get your medications or whatever, childcare, whatever it is, if you need them for something. If you don't need them for anything, whoo boy, then it's time for flames, potentially, if you want, because there's a lot of guilt that society puts on us for not always being there for our families and not pleasing every person, that honestly, you can disappoint people a whole hell of a lot and nobody dies from it. And I say this as someone who, I stopped talking to someone in my family and then they died. And I thought it was my fault for 10 years afterward. And me not talking to them was, in fact, probably a contributing factor, but it was still the right thing for me to do and was better for my family and for me to stop talking to that family member. So I am very familiar with the guilt. It was really ravaging for a really long time because I really felt that by saying I won't be spoken to this way, I won't be treated as your spouse anymore when I'm your child, I thought standing up for myself in that way had resulted in someone dying. I thought that was my fault. So it's very hard. In the end, I'm glad I did what I did. I'm proud of 18-year-old me for having done that, even though the costs of it were really heavy. Yeah, and honor thy mother and father has been used to justify so much abuse. Oh, I'm sorry that has also happened with you and your sister in your relationship to your mom, Emily. I'm glad it's out from the sound of it that you both eventually got to the point where you knew you had to draw a boundary and that you found that because it's worth it. And for anybody else who's dealt with any family estrangement, there's this blog by someone called Isende, and she writes about estranged parents forums. I'll write the name in the chat just so people know how it's spelled. Isende. And if you search for Isende estranged parents forums, you'll find this amazing blog. Oh, no, I didn't answer your question about seafood, but I don't know why it was asked, but I do eat seafood. I have some tilapia and salmon in the freezer right now and had sushi over Furfest weekend. I'm not a vegetarian or vegan. The only thing I don't eat is red meat, and that's just because I went so long without eating red meat that now it makes me shit and barf and paint the walls. Oh, yeah, yes, there's the blog. Thank you so much, B. Bailey B. It is a long read, this Isende blog, but if you have dealt with family members who you had to stop talking to or who guilted you for setting boundaries, or who are trying to see your kids when you don't want to give them, grandparent visitation rights or whatever the fuck. It's an incredibly emotional and validating deep dive into how parents who demand access to their kids justify and rationalize their abuse to themselves, and how impossible it is to argue with. There are people in the world who their understanding of their own power is something they have no incentive to question. And I am not going to call those people narcissists, because I'm a narcissist, and I don't do that. Like the problem is not narcissism. It's having power that you shouldn't have ever had and being unwilling to interrogate it. And Isanday's blog, she does talk about like narcissists and empaths sometimes, but for the most part, it really just talks about here are how people who have abused their kids refuse to hear that they've done that. And they will just keep sending the flying monkeys after their little Dorothys and Totos, their children, for the rest of their lives sometimes. But that doesn't mean you have to engage in it. B. Bailey B, today I have a cold brew with oat milk and 2 pumps of the toasted white chocolate swirl. Having power you never should have had. I'm going to sit with that for a minute. I believe basically everything comes down, and this is the anarchist in me, mind you. This is why I'm an anarchist, is because I see things this way. That all problems originate from power being wielded against people, us trying to control other people, or systems trying to control us as individuals, unjust power being wielded. And that is also why I am for the liberation of children. I don't know exactly what ideally that looks like, but I think we need a world where everyone has the ability to say, don't touch me, don't do this to me, I don't want to be here, this isn't right, and can find other welcoming, warm places to go. Octavia Butler as fuck. Yes. Bloodchild, that collection. When I read Bloodchild a few years ago, I could feel metaphorically the new neurons in my brain branching out, and my understanding of community responsibility and connection to others, and what it means to do hard but necessary things instead of trying to, and choosing to do that rather than trying to control other people. Like, it just was all coming together in my brain just from reading that book. And Kindred, also by Octavia Butler, really, really is an amazing book on radical acceptance of ourselves as existing within the social context and the history that we exist in. And I don't think people always pick up on that. People know that Kindred is about the legacy of racism and white supremacy and misogynoir, and it's about all of those things. And it's also about like grappling specifically with being a black woman in America, and how do you take hold of and take claim of your own life when it's embedded in this horrible history. But from that, we can learn a lot of really powerful things about working with and accepting your position in the world as a marginalized person, as a privileged person, as a person living on stolen land in a, carceral justice system. Like, how do you accept that reality and accept who you are and your positionality, and then make decisions about what's right, and affirm your own life while doing so? I don't know. It's fucking sick. B. Bailey B says, oat milk is not my thing, and I feel like a poser gay because of it. I used to not be a cold brew gay. I used to be a hot brew only gay. But I finally have come to see the light, because cold brew is so much easier to prepare. You can just throw it together at night, and it's so much easier on the tummy. So, big fan. Oh, hey, Gavin. Thanks for being here. Starbucks charging almost $1 for oat milk is criminal. Yes. Cold brew gives me sleep paralysis? What? I'm sorry to laugh, but Only cold brew? Only cold brew gives you sleep? Cold brew makes the demons come and sit on your chest? Chubby kumquat, liberation of children. What about children not being educated enough to make good decisions or whatever? Okay, well, a couple of things there. What do we mean by good decisions, right? How do we know what's a good or bad decision for a child? But of course, I hear you, right? Like, kids don't know most things about how the world work. I mean, hell, I don't know most things about how the world works, but I certainly know more. So what do we do for kids? And I think it's the same thing that we ideally should do for people with intellectual disabilities, or actually literally all of us. Um, Supported decision making. So, one of the alternatives to putting intellectually disabled people under a conservatorship, where their decisions are controlled for them and they don't have freedom, is something called supported or facilitated decision making, where they have access to aides, people to explain and translate complex legal concepts to them to help them figure out how to make the decision that they want to make while giving them information. And I think if you look at what I've had to say about informed consent for medication and HRT, you might start to notice kind of a thread here. A lot of the supports that we talk about children needing are actually supports all people need and all people deserve to have. And right now, we exist in this strange paradigm where children are the only ones who deserve support, and they also are not allowed freedom because of it. And those two things do not have to be diametrically opposed. Support and freedom do not need to be in opposition to each other. And so I think we all need supported decision making, right? We all need help making decisions. Like, when I signed up for student loans when I was going to college, I didn't know what the fuck any of that really meant, you know? Like, when I sign a lease to rent an apartment, I don't really understand the full weight of everything I'm agreeing to. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a tenants' rights organization. We are constantly, as adults, making decisions we don't actually fully understand the consequences of. And children, if we just let them loose upon the world with no guardians, they would be pretty fucked. As most of us are at multiple points in our lives fucked by making decisions that we were not supported and empowered in making. And so, and it does particularly tend to involve structures of power, such as money and legal agreements. So, my argument would be that children need to have supportive adults around them who can explain the world to them, who can show them how to do things, who can explain complex theoretical or philosophical ideas to them, to help facilitate kids exerting their autonomy. So it doesn't mean, when I talk about child liberation, I don't mean, let's throw all the kids in the wild, because that's not what autonomy means for adults either. As adults, we exist in a rich network of supports, but we deserve better ones, right? Like, if I need help thinking through a legal document, if I have money, I can hire someone to help me as a lawyer to explain a legal document to me. But really, any person who's making a legal decision should have access to support to explain those decisions to them, to help them make an informed decision. So, kind of in the paradigm I'm painting here, every person, regardless of age, would have access to medical advisors, legal advisors, education about the world. They would have some place to go to learn how to cook or how to clean things if they didn't grow up in an environment where they were taught that, and I think kids would have enough freedom of movement where they could choose to go to those things rather than being stuck with whatever parent they got. And you learn whatever that parent decides is important for the first 5 years of your life. And then you learn whatever the state says is important when they force you to go to school. So, it would not be this wilderness that I think when people hear the word like abolish the family, liberate the child, imagine this really scary free-for-all. But instead, I'm kind of saying clearly children need a lot of support, but that does not have to mean taking away their body autonomy. And in fact, if we divorced those two concepts of you only get support if you don't deserve autonomy, we would see that actually we should be providing these kinds of things to all people regardless of age, intellectual disabilities, cognitive status, mental health status, whatever. Okay. So I lost track of the chat for a second there because I had a lot of thoughts on that, but thank you for asking these questions. Cats says this applies to the adoptee rights movement too. Yep. None of us choose where we're born or who we're born to. None of us get to choose if we get adopted, who adopts us. And currently, our guardians as children basically own us. They get to decide what happens to our bodies, how we're dressed, how often we go to the doctor, what we eat, what we're taught about, just basic household tasks, if we're taught anything at all. They choose our name. They choose everything about us. They choose, they can stop us from doing almost anything that we want to do. And that is not a healthy way for children to grow up. It really erodes people's sense of self. And it's no wonder that when people get older and they become adults, they have a hard time making decisions because they've never been trusted to make decisions and they've never been empowered and informed to make decisions on their own until they're adults. And then they fumble, and then we say, oh, it's because they're so immature. And this is further proof of why we need to restrict the rights of children and young adults. And maybe we should make 25 the age of adulthood, since teenagers are so bad at making decisions. And it's like, would they be that bad at making decisions if they had any power or any resources to make it easier for them? Maybe not. But to have this conversation, we'd have to also stop imposing on other people what a good or bad decision always is. In the disability justice world, we have this concept of people have the right to make mistakes. If I, as someone who's not under a conservatorship, can marry whoever I want, Britney Spears should be able to marry whoever she wants, even if maybe she makes a bad decision, We all make bad decisions, and that's part of our autonomy. And even after we make bad decisions or mistakes or decisions we regret, we are equally entitled to support. I have a friend that had a baby, but she wanted to prove she could also be a better parent than her abusive mom. That seems against a child's autonomy. People have kids for a lot of weird reasons. And a lot of them do feel weird to me. But to me, it ultimately comes down to people do have that body autonomy to make that decision, and I wouldn't ever want to see the state or society try and control people's freedom to have kids. And so I think we kind of ultimately have to kind of accept that there will always be people who have kids who go, oh shit, I fucked up with this one, or kids who are born into families where it's not good for the kid or the kid's suffering. And in a world where kids were more liberated, they could hit the bricks and move in with a neighbor who had always been around and helped raise them, or a relative, or a teacher, and these labels would be a little bit more permeable and fuzzy anyway, right? Like you would, if kids had more autonomy, they would be able to leave an abusive home environment and into another home without being like forcibly removed by the state. It would just be like the way I envision it, this more, community, neighborly thing. And I think that would prevent a lot of child abuse going on as long as it does, because a kid would be able to say, "This, I feel funny about this. I don't like this." Whereas when I'm over at this person's house, this person that I've known for years, I feel good and listened to, and strong, B. Bailey B. How can I create a space of liberation for my child clients as a therapist? And Photo said, ask the child. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Photo, for that. Ask the child, trust the child, and know that it will take a long time for a kid to trust you. Like most kids are not used to being listened to. So I think you liberate them by listening to them and showing them with your behavior that you actually trust them. Um, and I think that takes a really long time. And just don't take that personally. I mean, you might feel some emotions about it, and that's fine. But just know that it's not a reflection on you if a kid is afraid to open up to you because it takes a long time. Liberate by listening. Yeah, that could probably be a self-help book. I don't think I should write it, but because I'm not the best listener, but somebody should write that. How do you think delirium enters into supported decision making, dementia, hallucinations, etc.? This is already something that we're doing. Like even with as flawed as the legal system is, you can have not a conservator who has power over you, but a either court appointed or self selected, and I think it should be self selected, supports person that helps kind of not step in, but kind of serve as an advisor to you. And I think so obviously there are cases where people have full blown psychosis where they are also not aware that they're experiencing psychosis. And that is a situation where admittedly I don't know what the answer quote unquote is, but I think it kind of depends on, is this person hurting anyone else or infringing on anybody else's body autonomy? And or have they mentioned in the past when they were in a non-psychotic frame of mind that they really need support during psychotic frames of mind, right? And a lot of times, like most people who, let's say, experience a total break from reality, if they've done things during that psychotic break that really hurt them or others, they want support, and they probably have or want to build a relationship with a friend or two who they're like, this person calms me down. I know I can trust this person. I feel less paranoid around this person. And I know just in my own life, I know people who have those kinds of relationships who, when they're experiencing paranoid delusions, they call up their one friend who they have such a trusting relationship with that person that they still feel it even in the heights of their paranoid delusions. And so that person can help talk them down and help regulate them and de-escalate any situations that are happening. And I've known people who have had those kinds of friendships go on for decades without any major incidents. Where that person will call their support person when they're in the middle of hurting themselves, and because of that support, it never goes beyond self-harm into hurting someone else or ending their life. So I think that's one model for how that looks. And I think with hallucinations and dementia, a lot of those mental conditions, people are to some degree self-aware for a lot of them. And so it's actually not as hard to do supportive decision making as you might think. So a lot of dementia sufferers, they don't know where they are, but they know they're confused, and they know that like they feel more grounded if someone is validating them and paying attention to them and explaining things to them. And so a lot of times they can still kind of collaborate through a decision-making process about the things that still matter to them in their life, right? Like, what are they going to wear? What are they going to eat? What do they want to do with their day? And there might be limits to what they're capable of that they're kind of bumping up against because of their disabilities and like losses of ability and things like that. But this is all kind of a very meandering way of saying that, like, I think we underestimate how much a person who's struggling can do when they actually feel safe and comforted and heard. Yeah. Does that mean that's not like a silver bullet, right? Like, I don't want to be a Pollyanna, right? Like, there are going to be people who they're having a paranoid delusion and they start attacking other people. That shit happens. There are people who, they have a manic episode and then they accuse someone of sexual assault who they've never met in their life. Things happen in mental health episodes that really hurt other people and hurt the person themselves. And I'm, but I think the fear of those kinds of things is used to justify so much coercive control and violence that I'd really like to see us err on the other side. It's wild how normalized hospital-induced delirium is, when it is so often preventable. Yes, a lot of the times when we see people acting out of control and scary, it's because we've been trying to control them, and not listen to them. And so they're lashing out in ways that make sense because nothing else has worked. Another really good book on this is called The Protest Psychosis. And it's about how a lot of black revolutionaries during the civil rights era were diagnosed as schizophrenic. And so these were people who had completely rational and accurate views of their own oppression. But to white psychiatrists, they sounded paranoid and delusional and violent, just because they were black people who said, we need a revolution. And I think, is that true of every person who's having, delirium or having a paranoid delusion in psychiatry's eyes? No. But I think we do a lot to create the very conditions that psychiatry says it's protecting us from. And that things would not escalate to that kind of place for a lot of people if they had supportive decision making and if they had some autonomy. A lot of times what a person just needs is to just get the hell out of the room where somebody's trying to control them. Like, that's when people lash out in violence, is when they're being contained. So, but again, not trying to be a Pollyanna. Problems will still happen. Violence will still happen. Human beings are not inherently good. I just don't think they're inherently evil. You know what I mean? Like, I think people will be wilding out and acting stupid forever, and that's fine. Like, I think that's also part of the radical acceptance bit. Like, not to say that we don't care, right, about preventing violence or preventing harm, but I think we have to accept a certain degree of humans acting kind of wild as the consequence of not controlling everybody all the time. And I think in any like anarchist project or socialist project, that would be something that we're constantly discussing, where to draw the lines and what supports to put in place. I don't think there is a static answer to that stuff. I think it's something we continually work out. Yeah, but that's kind of more or less how I see it. Freddie DeBoer would hate me for every second of this, which is good. Let me hydrate. I've been spitting bars. Woo! This has turned out to be such a great chat, you guys. Thank you so much for these amazing questions and thoughts and reactions so far. And I'm glad people are trading notes and connecting. Emily and B. Bailey B. It's really nice to see all of these kind of like radical mental health workers meeting each other. Hi, Chrissie. Thanks for being here. And thanks for being here for the Twitch. It's been so fun. And talking about these kinds of dense topics is like the supreme fun of my life. Zam, any advice for communicating kink needs to a more heteronormative partner? I think, I'll probably save this one a little bit for when Maddie and I are doing the relationship stream, hopefully next week. But I would say, like, as a general principle, like, are they open-minded or are they not open-minded? Like, I think there's some cis-het heteronormy people who, if you try to tell them any kind of wild shit you're into, it makes them so uncomfortable that all they can do is shut you down. And that's going to make you feel really ashamed. And there's no, like, cute, handy script that'll fix that one. Whereas I think if a person is curious, is humble, wants you to feel pleasure and feel good in your own body, they should be able to work through any initial knee-jerk discomfort they feel, and deal with that on their own, and be able to have frank conversations with you as your partner about, here's something I'm willing to try, here's something where I don't understand why it turns you on, but maybe if you explain it to me, it'll turn me on, or it'll make me happy to give you that experience, because I'll understand what wearing a maid outfit symbolizes for you, or what you pretending to be a puppy represents in terms of making you feel loved and cared for, and feeling less pressure and stress. Like whatever, as that Tumblr post that's going around about how every fetish is a metaphor. Like whatever your kinks are, whatever need it kind of meets or scratches. I think sometimes you can explain it to a partner in that way to make them appreciate it. But they have to be receptive and willing to put in that internal work. Chubby Kumquat says, as someone sometimes uncomfortable with sex stuff, I like when people give me time to process alone initially. And I think that's completely fine to expect and to need. And I would hope, in the context of a longer term relationship, people would kind of know that about each other, so that they could say, okay, I need to. Oh, and as Gwyneth B says, I don't have to respond in the moment. I don't need to pretend to be enthusiastic right now, and I don't have to say, great, let's put on the teddy bear costume right now, let's do this. Because that is a high pressure situation, and people generally in relationships and sex are not going to respond very well to high pressure to do something they don't want to do. Even if you're not actually literally pressuring them, they feel a pressure because they care about you and they want, to be compatible. So, yeah, I think sharing it in writing or saying just briefly in a non-sexual context, this is something I'm into, this is what it means to me, and here are some places where you can read more about it when you're ready, and then giving the person some time to do their own research and sit with it. There's a lot of kink stuff that more vanilla people feel freaked out by at first if there's any violence or power exchange in it, because it makes them feel like, well, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to abuse you. I don't want to make you do something you don't want to do. These are all the things that, as your partner, I would never want to do. So the idea of pretending to do that or actually doing it makes me feel dirty and bad, And that emotional reaction, that squick, makes sense. And there's nothing wrong with that. And maybe over time, some people can kind of sit with it and say, okay, now I understand I'm not actually hurting you, that this feels good, that this is a way of expressing trust and intimacy. And as long as you reassure me afterward that you feel okay, that you had a good time, that I did a good job, we can both get something out of it. And some people will, after doing that soul searching, will say, I can do this thing, but I can't do that thing. Why don't you get that met with someone else? And I think it's even okay for someone to have, if they need to, the barrier of like, you can do that thing, but some of the details I can't hear about because blood makes me faint, or this reminds me of a trauma I endured, whatever, There are ways to navigate these things that are not, nobody's shaming anyone. Nobody's trying to make someone be something that they're not. But all that said, there's no perfect way to say it. And you don't have to say it perfectly. If both people in the relationship respect each other and are interested in each other's well-being, they'll at least try to understand, or at least respect that it means something to the other person. And that doesn't mean, sometimes couples still find out that they're fundamentally incompatible, right? And that's a very sad thing, that sometimes everybody did everything right, and the logical path to that was a very sad breakup, or opening up their relationship in ways that cause a lot of complications and as well as benefits. It's messy shit. It's hard even when everybody's doing everything right. But yeah, we can talk about that more when Maddie is on too, because I know she has thoughts and experiences with that stuff, in terms of she was talking about on the Fur Fest stream last week, finding out that some girl she was talking to, I think it was a girl that she was talking to, was a furry, and being like, oh wait, this isn't neutral information, and it's definitely not bad information. Finding out that this person has this kink is a plus, and then having to kind of say to her partner, I think I might be a furry. because Maddie's married, for those that don't know, and poly. Okay, so I have been streaming for 2 hours and 18 minutes and talking nonstop the whole time, and y'all have been amazing. Um, we've had a lot of really good discussions in here. Let's have like a 10-minute wind down time. So we'll stop on the half hour, if that sounds good. So any last lingering questions, reactions, things you want to share? We have a little time to get into them. And then I have to get back to editing my third book. Yeah. Oh, gratitude for this space. And a question. How do you initiate conversations like this one, especially about power disparities with friends and community members? Um, I don't know if I'm the best person to ask because I come in bat swinging. Like, I don't know what it is. I guess I just have enough practice and am likable enough that even when I tell people like you're leveraging power you shouldn't be leveraging, like my boss for example is like, oh, I didn't think about how, like, we just had a conversation at work this week for example about um, encouraging our students to have their cameras on during Zoom classes, and how, my boss was talking about how, oh, it creates a sense of social presence. It's a good thing, for educators. It helps them as teachers feel seen. It creates more discussion in class. We should encourage our students to have their cameras on. And I kind of just spoke up and said, over the last few years, I've heard from a lot of people who are parents and people in poverty and black and brown people in particular that, and disabled people that like having your camera on always, or being required to, can really feel like an intrusion in your space and that you're being surveilled, because those are groups that historically they have everything about how they live surveilled. And also, if someone has a really busy, fast-paced life and they have to attend class from, their car in a parking lot with their kid crawling around in the back seat, they might feel embarrassed about that, or some professors might shame them. And so if they want to have their camera off, they might be better able to focus on class when they don't feel that distraction of surveillance. And so I don't think we should encourage, because encouraging is still a form of pressure because we have power over them as students. This is just an example. And that's like literally what I said, like, y'all know how I talk. This is how I always talk. I'm always like this. Uh, and it was received pretty well. But that's because I do have a boss who's like very willing to admit when she's wrong about certain things and respects me in particular as like a white person who speaks academese, And so that's my strategy, but that's not always the best strategy. Tact is hard to master, and I think just slowly leading someone through your logic with an example, and kind of framing it of like, I wonder how someone in this situation might feel. Can it kind of help people think through new perspectives? Some people never will. A lot of people are too invested in the power that they do have to do that. But that's usually what I use in, activist meetings and in work meetings, or just saying like, one way that I like to do it is like, well, here's a potential consequence of that idea that we might not have thought of, or like, someone in this situation might feel this way about this policy, or what if someone's like this, just like asking the question out loud. I used to be very boorish and arrogant, and I still am, but for some reason I've nailed how to seem more tactful. And I've talked about this a little bit in Unmasking Autism. This is one of the benefits of masking. Like, I've learned to use masking as a tool. I used to just be very placating, but now I can take that kind of diplomatic tool set and use it to accomplish my goals. So, which goes back to being an Aquarius rising. I'm often perceived as militant, which I kind of am because I feel so rushed to get an idea out before getting interrupted or dismissed. Yes, that is another thing I've noticed. Often the difference between aggression and assertiveness is speed. If you move more slowly, like even just literally walking down the street really quickly looks kind of anxious and maybe even aggressive. If you're like weaving or shoving in between people, whereas just kind of slowly walking the path you're going to walk, people will get out of your way a little bit more. I say this as a white man, so people defer to me more than many other groups of people. Um, so when you have a little bit less of that anxiety behind you, sometimes people notice and respond in kind. But if you're constantly being interrupted and people aren't listening to you, like that sounds to me like an environment where your delivery is not the problem, right? Like people aren't the problem is people don't listen to you and don't take you seriously. So no wonder they don't take you seriously. It's because you're in an environment where people don't respect you. Like it's probably not your fault there. Like there's small tweaks we can make on how we package a gift, but if people don't want that gift, no wrapping paper will make them cherish it. And that's a line I'll definitely need to use again in the context of like language policing and whatever. Okay. Someone asked about, are you going to get into an arrogant Aries? Never. A couple of people asked about stream schedule. All right. So we're going to have one. I swear. I swear to God. And it will happen when we make a final push to make Twitch affiliate. And the reason I want to do this is because I want Maddie to get paid for all the work she does making this happen. Like, in an ideal world, we might make this a regular weekly or twice a week thing, and it might be Maddie's, like, job to work on these streams. I would love to get to that place where we could just pay her salary from, like, this, like, to do this. Like, and to do that, to qualify as a Twitch affiliate so we can start making money, basically, I need to have at least 50 followers, so we got that. Have to have at least 3 viewers per stream. Y'all consistently been coming through for that, so thank you so much for that. Have to stream 8 hours in a month and have to stream 7 days a month. So I think when we make our push, it'll probably be like a Tuesday, Thursday afternoon every week, or Monday, Friday afternoon every week. But we have to hammer out the oh, you look like a cocktail shaker. Oh yeah. So we don't have that yet. If you look on Twitch right below this video, there's a little schedule thing. I will start every time I know. As soon as I know, I will populate the schedule on here with our stream schedule. We've been doing Fridays the last couple of weeks, but when we make that affiliate push, it'll probably be either every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon or maybe every Monday, Friday afternoon. I just say that because I know I have department meetings on Wednesdays sometimes, so but I'll have to hammer out the specifics with Maddie. And then when we do that, it'll be a mix of kind of a fun activity-based stream, like watching the dog show, playing a game, testing fragrances, and then also kind of these post-mortem AMA streams where I either talk about a piece of writing, take questions from you guys, and things like that. Because I really like these serious conversations, and it's also very tiring, and it's easier to have a co-host in a shared activity, and Maddie is so easy for me to talk to, and that's a very rare, beautiful thing. So, not to open a whole can of words, but doesn't YouTube pay better? Does it? Does it? I don't know. A part of me wanted to go to YouTube because you can do super chats, and that seems like a kind of nicer revenue stream than pre-roll advertisements. Because I obviously will never take sponsors, will never do any ad placements like that. But if you become a Twitch affiliate, I think sometimes right before the stream starts, it just runs some generic commercial, which I don't love, and we've talked about, should we just turn that off once we get the chance to do that? Whereas on YouTube, you can get money from people super chatting, which is very opt-in, right? Nobody has to do that, but if somebody wants to do that as a tip, they can do that. It says they take a 30% cut rather than 50. Twitch takes 50? Oh my fucking God. Oh my God. Oh Lord. Oh God. Well, here you can see my lack of planning and my Aries nature in full force. Fuck. Shit. I think God, if it's 50%, we might have to go the Patreon model. Obviously, still doing the streams here, or just like having a tip jar. I don't know. There's a lot of ways to do this. Like, we could make a bot that is just a tip jar that goes to our. I already told Dev all this. I think he just likes the Twitch aesthetic more. He don't listen. Well, to be fair, Maddie liked the Twitch aesthetic as well more. We decided that, but Hank Green has a lot of YouTube videos on this. Oh, okay. I do like purple, as we can see. I like purple. This is like purple. I really thought about it, and I like a lot. It seems like there's more like like LawTube is on YouTube, right? Legal commentators are on YouTube. People doing those kinds of live streams and reacts are on YouTube. And I wish I could multi-stream, but then we'll get dinged by Twitch. For a while, YouTube was a way worse platform to break into, but then they just made it possible to make your own @handle. But yeah, Ko-fi, we could, if you don't consistently make $100, Twitch keeps a monthly percentage for taxes. It's very weird. Patreon or Ko-fi sounds nice. Okay. Yeah. And I have had a really positive experience turning on Medium's tip jar. Like, I did not expect people to give me any tips for that, and nobody should feel like they have to. Nobody should do it unless they, like, make, like, 6 figures or more, honestly. Like, nobody, like, you should be very comfortable, very well off. Like, nobody should tip me. Like, I don't deserve it. But putting in a tip jar or something like that, especially with making it clear that it's like, this is Maddie's job, I think would be cool. Or just having it go directly to like her Venmo or something. These are all good things to know and things I did not think through because, as an Aries, if I spend too much time thinking through a decision, then I just, what if I don't make it? I just gotta fuck it, we ball, and figure it out from there. And that lack of a filter or censor is part of why I'm who I am today. But anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This was really fun. We had no dearth of things to talk about. We didn't talk about Jeremy Fragrance for whoever asked about that. Sorry, I missed your chat. But we are going to do a fragrance stream where we test fragrances and we watch Jeremy Fragrance videos. So watch this space. All right, let me see if I can raid someone. I don't know how that works. Again, because Maddie does everything. Let's see if there's a raid button here on Twitch Studio. We're here either way. We just want y'all to grab that cash. Thank you so much for the support. Oh, thanks, Eric, for doing the share, subscribe, whatever. Not that I care or anything, but no, thank you for the support and for moderating the chat, Eric. You're a real one. How the fuck do I raid? Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here. If I can figure it out, I'm going to send you along to the stream of someone else that is cool to keep your background chill Friday afternoon vibes rolling. But if not, I'll see y'all soon. Hit me up on Tumblr. Send Maddie get well soon vibes. Oh, my game keeps error coding me, so I had nothing better to do. Well, thank you for being here. All right. Talk to y'all later.